What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest this week is class of 1985's Evelyn del Cerro, four-time Emmy winner, the 2012 Kerosene Lecter, worked with the likes of Peter Jennings and Regis Philbin, amongst other things. She's going to tell her entire story, well, as much as she can get in this time frame. But without further ado, I'm going to let Evelyn tell her story. What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest this week is Evelyn del Cerro, class of 1985. Evelyn, thank you very much for being on the show.
Of course, thank you for the invite.
Tea for you. I don't have tea because, I still haven't figured out the whole passing it through the camera thing, but it's 2021. Anything's possible.
Cool. I'm cool with that.
So we're going to do this the way we do it every week, Chuckleheads. Evelyn's going to tell us everything from 1981 and her arrival in Bethany to 2021 and what she's doing today. There'll be a break in there somewhere. We'll talk to KJ. We'll talk to Harry. We got to get everybody in there. But 1981. So I know there's a funny story of coming down 88 and into Bethany.
Yeah. Bethany wasn't my original choice. I had planned to go to either Emerson or Syracuse. So I had been accepted into both, and I was really planning to go to both. And, I played varsity softball for 4 years in high school. And our coach had told us senior year that we all had to go to, the seniors on the team, had to go to this college fair at Lehman College up in the Bronx. And so I kind of said, well, look, I already know where I'm going. I don't really want to go. And she's like, you don't go, you don't play. So it was kind of like, okay, I guess I'm going,
Yeah, easy
So
choice.
reluctantly went to college fair, like a, typical 17-year-old kid, just not interested in anything. Didn't really go to any tables, just walking around because I had to be there. And my eyes got attracted to this table. Back then, we're talking before the internet, before email and all this stuff. So college fairs, basically, they just had pictures of the campus and like little booklets they gave out. And my eyes kind of got drawn to this green tablecloth because like green's my favorite color. And I'm just like looking at these pictures of this campus, beautiful pictures of Old Main and Commencement Hall. And the guy who was working the table, he was actually an alum himself, come to find out later. But he yelled out to me, so what are you interested in studying? And I was like, no, man, I'm cool. I already know where I'm going. He's like, well, what are you going to study? I said, I want to study radio, because that was what I wanted to do back then. And he's like, well, we've got a radio station at Bethany. And I was like, yeah, no, I think I'm going to go to Syracuse or Emerson, and I told him, but the only thing was, I had found out that as a freshman, you couldn't be on the radio station because they were both big schools. So like freshmen would just observe. And so I mentioned that to him and he's like, at Bethany, by the time you're a sophomore, you could be running the radio station,
Which,
so
down the road you are.
So of course that piqued my interest. I walked a little closer to the table, and what he neglected to tell me though was that WVBC was a 10-watt radio station, which basically made it like a campus PA system. Once you got past the Gresham House, you weren't catching it. But he piqued my interest. I took some pamphlets home, and I decided last minute. I thought small class sizes. I went to a really large urban. I was born in Manhattan. I moved to the Bronx in like 4th grade, and my graduating class in high school was like 1,200 students. Okay, so that's like the campus, the faculty, and you throw in the townsfolk,
Down Wellsburg, maybe grab some West Liberty people.
Exactly. So, I really liked that. The class sizes were small. I found out they had a softball team. A couple of days later, I get a letter from the softball coach, because fill out those little cards with everything you do in high school,
Mm-hmm.
And so I just decided, I think I'm gonna go here. I told my mom, I think I'm gonna go to the school in West Virginia. My mother's like, what? What? West Virginia? I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And so, I think she wanted me close by. But when I looked at these pictures of Bethany, it looked like what a college should look like,
Mm-hmm.
and I love tradition and all that. So all of that was really cool. So I decided last minute, I applied, I got accepted, and I decided, yeah, I think I'm going to go here, So my mother drives me to Bethany, I hadn't gone to visit the campus. I didn't know. Yeah. Only thing I knew about Bethany was what the pictures in the book look like, and we're on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and I'm sitting up all excited, like, I can't wait to get to college, and all of a sudden we got onto Route 88 and the whole mood changed. It was like, this road was like, whoop, 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 whoop. My mother's like holding the wheel, white knuckled, like holding, she's like, I'll never forget. She turned to me. She's like, Evelyn, I hope you like it here, because I'm not coming back to graduation.
Well, and your mom has an interesting, I had John Cunningham on last week, and he told a story of how when he first met you and he found out that I was having you on the show, he told me a story about how he asked your mom what she was planning on studying.
Yeah. I met him before I got to Bethany, because it was an open house in New York at the home of Tim Henningsen, Fletch. He's a beta. And he walked up to my mom at this open house and was like, hi, nice to meet you. What are you interested in studying? And my mother's like, my daughter's the one who's interested.
This is over here.
Yeah, this one over here. And 4 years later, graduation, he came up to my mother. He's like, oh, Mrs. Del Cerro, I just want to say, I still remember that, my mother's like, don't worry. It made her feel good, believe me, to be taken for a college student,
Well, but so you get to Bethany.
Yeah, so we pull into the town, we turn onto 67, and we get down there by Bubba's. We pass Bubba's. And my mother's like, well, before we see this, get you unpacked, let's, check out the town. So we keep going straight, and we go over the little bridge. We pass Campbell Mansion. We start seeing cows. My mother's like, I think that was the town. I'm like, no way, Ma, no way. So we turn around, we come back, and there's this guy standing outside of Chambers. And I asked him, I'm like, can you tell me like where the main town is? And he's like, you're looking at it.
You're in it.
I was like, no way, man, no, this cannot be happening. So I was like convinced like I'd made a huge mistake. So we pull up to Phillips Hall, and the RAs that are there, and they're helping unpack and everything. And I'll never forget, this one guy asked me, he's like, so where are you from? I said, I'm from the Bronx, New York. And he's like, oh, you're the one who's rooming with the girl from Burbank, California. And I was like, because back then you got your roommate's name, and you had to like write a letter. We're talking ancient history here.
You have payphones too.
Yeah, on paper with a stamp, and the whole deal. So so I was like, God, I just got here, and they already know who I am. It was really weird. But my roommate was from Burbank, California. Her dad was a Bethanian. So, that's how she got there. And we got along great. I think people thought it was going to be the girl from the Bronx and the girl from Burbank were going to like kill each other. Yeah. But she also played softball. She was our catcher. I played second base. So we got along great. It was fantastic. So yeah, it was the first 3 weeks, I would say in 2 words, culture shock.
Because you're coming from a city, you're coming from being in a class, just a class of 1,200,
right?
There's 1,200 people just in this town as a whole.
Right, exactly. And I didn't, the whole being in the middle of the woods thing was kind of freaking me out too. Like my friends today from Bethany, I just saw a couple of them a couple of weeks ago. We went on a little weekend trip, but they brought up a story about me walking down the hill, and a rabbit jumped out and ran across the path, and I like freaked out. Like I jumped like 10 feet in the air, and they're like, what's going on? I'm like, there was something that ran across, and they're like, it was a rabbit.
Just calm down. It's not worried about it.
Yeah, it's just a rabbit. So it took me some time to adjust, because I grew up, like I said, I grew up in the Bronx. We didn't have much money. I had never been further west than Newark, New Jersey my entire life. So, even when I came home and I told people, oh, I go to school in West Virginia, they're like, oh, Virginia Beach is really nice, or you get to go to DC. And I'm like, no.
Wrong
Virginia is another state, right? It's its own state. People over here in New York, they don't get that.
Well, wait a minute. Now, I've been here since 2010, and I've met people from West Virginia that tell me that they're Virginian. And I go, no, you guys are I live here. You're your own state. But so academically, so you decide you're here, you're going to play softball,
Yeah.
and the radio station and the TV station are, and I would guess that's, and I always get his name wrong, but it starts with a K. He was very, very influential in the comm
Oh,
department.
Jim Carty?
Cardi,
Starts
Dr.
with a C, actually.
C.
C.
Well, that's might be why I always mess it up because I thought it was a K. But
Yeah.
he's part of that department, and it's really starting to take its own. I mean, like you said, WVBC it's a Bethany PA. It was a Bethany PA system. Now with it being online, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
so what was that first year like? And then we get into you running, basically being the lady on the radio.
Yeah. So the nice thing about was my senior year, though, we did get some big, huge grant was given to us, and we got a power increase to 50,000 watts, which was really cool for, I mean, not as cool as being on the internet for the, kids today, but it was really cool because now we were like a tri-state station, like people in Washington, PA could hear us, and Steubenville, Ohio, West Virginia. So we were getting more than just like guys hanging out at the KA house calling up and requesting music,
Yeah.
But anyway, I started out in the beginning. My first thing in the radio station was with John Graham, who was the treasurer at the time. His daughter Sherry graduated with me, and his son Tim was a couple years younger than me. And he did a show on WVBC called Monday Night Oldies, and it was a 50s doo-wop show. Now I knew nothing about doo-wop, but I got asked to engineer the show for him, and I was like, I'm in. I want to get in
Jump
here.
in right away.
Right. So I engineered with him, and then slowly he started to like pull me into the show. He would like, it sort of became us co-hosting after a while. And he was fantastic. I mean, he and his wife, Linda, who just passed away recently, they would invite me to their home for dinner, which was, for me, being so far away from home, that was really just fantastic. They were just amazing people. So I did that for a while. And then I started hosting my own show called The Magic Bus, which had a little bit of a cult following at Bethany. It was a 60s rock show.
Okay.
Yeah, it was, they used to air on Wednesday nights, and every night, Wednesday night, the SAE house used to have they'd get like kegs together, and they would listen to my show. And then after the show, I'd put my albums in a little box, and I'd go up the hill and hang out and have a couple of beers, yeah, and actually I had a few professors that really would call in and were into the show.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really nice. So that whole experience at WVBC was great. And then by the time I was, I think it was my senior year, the end of my junior year, I got the position of student manager. And so I, basically ran the place with, I have to give a shout out to our music director at that time was Matt Mastrangelo, who ended up being the publisher of Rolling Stone magazine.
Mm-hmm.
So he did well for himself.
Yeah.
And Hal Newman, who was our news director. And we had a great staff. We were on the air. We had people in the chair on the air from 6 a.m. till 2 a.m., Monday through Sunday.
So really, there was 4 hours where it was just kind of on a loop, but everything else was somebody.
It wasn't on a loop. It was just dark. There was we signed off.
Okay.
We signed off, and we would sign on. The nice part was where we were, that in Renner Union, that hallway, the long hallway, I think it's probably part of COM now. That was the admissions office.
Okay.
And then across the hall from the radio station was the bookstore. So we were in a fantastic spot. People were coming and going, and we were there. We had that big glass window and spinning records, and, you had prospective students coming through, and it was just a lot of fun. Like, there was always stuff happening, at the radio station. So.
And so you said, you brought up the fun side of things, and you said on your first day, you drove down Main Street through town to Bubba's and whatnot. What was the Bubba's atmosphere like? Because this is Bubba's before, for my generation, we always had the downstairs.
Yeah.
Downstairs. There's a grass field back there. It's just the building, the brick building that you see.
Yeah. What us old folks, we call that the annex, because when the first time we walked in that place we were like, whoa, because you have to imagine, when I was there, the 4 years I was there, the drinking age was 18.
Mm-hmm.
So you had the entire student body in Bubba's, just that first area, that top, that main area. And it was shoulder to shoulder people like every night. You walked in with your beer and you're like, excuse me. But a funny story is Chuck, who I love, Chuck Kern, who I think passed away too early. I hadn't come back for like 5 years, and I walked into Bubba's. I came back for my 5-year homecoming, reunion, and I walked into Bubba's, and I see Chuck there with his little baseball cap. They all wore baseball caps with their names on them, Woody, Chuck. Mm-hmm. And I walked in, and I'm like, "Hey, Chuck, you remember me?" And he's like, "How can I forget you, Evelyn, girl from the Bronx?"
I can see Chuck in my head going, "You're from the Bronx."
Yeah, but I was shocked because how many kids have come through since I left, and he actually remembered me. So that was pretty cool. That just shows you like small town Bethany. That's what it's all about,
And you were part of a sorority on campus.
Yeah, I was a Zeta. I didn't even know what a sorority was when I got to college. I had seen like fraternities, Animal House, and that stuff. I didn't even know anything about it, but it's one of those things back then. Like, we had 7 fraternities and 5 sororities when I was there. So it was like, I would say 80% or so of the student body was Greek.
Okay.
And it just, it became a thing like, okay, I want to live where my friends are living. Once you get out of Phillips Hall, yeah, you got to decide where you live. So it was either live in Campbell Hall, which was down on Main Street, which was just like cinder block rooms, or join one of the houses. So yeah, so I joined Zeta, and I had a great time there. I was pledge trainer one year, vice president there, and we had a lot of fun. Those are still my best friends to this day.
Well, and that's part of that, the Bethany experience as it is. For a lot of the, like you said, 80% probably because of the amount of houses and whatnot. And you got to be here at a point where there's, Sigma Nu's still thriving, KA's still here, Alpha Sig's up at Point Breeze, SAE's where Alpha Sig is now. There's KD, there's Phi Mu, Alpha Z, Delt, Phi Tau, and there's the one. So JC, this was one of his questions. We could not remember the 5th sorority. So we had KD,
Pi Beta Phi. Pi Beta Phi.
I will let him know that it was Pi, because we sat here last week and we tried to pull it, and he goes, I'm gonna think of it. And I saw him later in the night after we recorded, and I said, "Do you think of who that sorority is?" He goes, "No, but you have Evelyn on next week. You better ask her because she'll remember."
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, they were actually the only sorority that was on Old Parkinson's, the hill over by where now CV Campbell Village is. Those were like faculty apartments back in the day, the ugly ones too. But over there you had you had Delta, you had the Delta House, you had Phi Tau, Pi Beta Phi, and then you had Goodnight and Woolery, which were independent houses. And then on our hill we had Sigma Alpha Epsilon, which they ended up losing their charter, and they made an independent men's house called Overflow.
Yeah, I had Ken on a couple months ago, and we finally disproved the myth that the SAEs blew up the steps behind the library. I would say Ken is convinced that it didn't happen. I've talked to some other alumni that were there around the time. They kind of give that shrug that you just gave, where, no, I don't think they did that, but
I'll tell you what I know they did do, and I think was one of the reasons why they ended up finally losing their charter, was they gave us back in those days wooden furniture in our lounges. This ugly block wooden furniture. It's like sofas and love seats and these wooden coffee tables. And all of us used to make fires behind our house. We didn't have those nice decks these guys have now. Yeah. We just had, you walked out and it was either like dirt or mud, depending on the weather. And so we would just build like these like little bonfires, and they one day ended up putting a sofa and a couch in the fire because they ran out of wood.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, they burnt the lounge furniture, the downstairs lounge furniture, and I think that was the final straw, along with other things that we won't talk about here.
No. But so then on the athletic side, How was softball for that time? Because that's
Yeah, softball. Okay, so I came from a really competitive high school team. We had an undefeated season. We went to the city championship. We never won, unfortunately, but we went to the city championship twice. We always got beaten by these girls in Staten Island. They just eat, drink, and sleep softball out there. But so I came from a really competitive background in program. And when I got to Bethany, it was kind of yeah, the competition. Yeah, it was. I was really like, really, this is the teams we're playing. And then the coach Sally Darwart, she left after my freshman year. So sophomore year, they didn't even have a coach, and we ended up getting a guy named Howie Seiler, who was an education professor, and he stepped in, or else I don't know what we would have done. But he just did it so that we could play, and we did have fun. It wasn't what I was used to. And, I knew it wouldn't be being a Division III school anyway, but I didn't expect, that it was going to be that non-competitive. I mean, the way the program was, in recent years, it was just completely turned around. And we didn't even have that nice field. I mean, I came back one year, I saw the softball field with dugouts and everything. I was like, are you kidding me? We had like wooden benches that we sat on, like we didn't have a wall, nothing. If it rained, we were out there like, raking the mud out off the infield. But yeah, it was not, it wasn't a priority. I'll put it that way. Women's softball was not a priority at Bethany College in the 80s.
well, and then on the academic side, you've already said you really like the idea of the small class sizes.
Yeah.
What was, because I've heard different things through the generations of what Bethany changed academically, where I think I interviewed Jack Hoffman, and he talked about how on campus the women couldn't be by themselves; they had to be escorted by somebody, and they had to wear white gloves.
Yeah, I'm not that old, man.
Well, I'm just by the 80s. What was the academic culture?
Okay, I will say that you didn't have a lot of people on academic probation or anything like that. I mean, believe me, there were a lot of parties going on, but I think that we had some amazing professors. I mean, legendary Bethany professors, Larry Grimes, Forrest Kirkpatrick, Hiram Lester, John Hall, Gail Thompson. I mean, these guys were just amazing. And so, and there were a lot of them were there a long time, so I think, it wasn't as stringent back then as, back in the olden days. I mean, we did hear stories, there was a woman named Miss Nick, Darlene Nicholson. And one of the things that I did, one of my jobs, I was like a roadie. She brought amazing talents to Bethany for entertainment, because on the weekends, nobody went home. My godson went there in 2004, and his biggest regret was that, and he was from Cape Cod, so he couldn't, he was stuck
go home.
Right. And he would say on the weekends it was like a ghost town. I was like, I can't believe that. On the weekends, one of my sorority sisters was Nancy Chambers, and she didn't even go home on the weekends.
Yeah.
So she brought amazing talent. We had like Three Dog Night. We had the Ramones played at the Field House. I'm talking the Field House before the big.
Before the addition.
Yeah, before the renovation, we like to call it. And they were so loud, man. We were outside of the Field House and we were screaming at each other to talk, because that's how loud the Ramones were. But Spyro Gyro, I mean, I don't know how she did it to bring these acts to this little tiny college in the middle of nowhere. But so yeah, it was great. Like everybody, the weekends, that place came alive on the weekends, where
work on the weekend.
What I heard. Yeah.
The weekend, it was, let's go, let's relax.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Well, this is the point. I got to send it to a fellow alumni, Kieran KJ Dunn with Maple Shade Outdoors. We're going to come back and we'll take care of that thing that connects us all. That damn test. I still have nightmares every time I do this show. I start talking.
I'm sweating.
Maple Shade Outdoors. If you haven't yet, go on Instagram, follow them. It's maple_shade.outdoors. Or the easier one, go onto YouTube, hit subscribe to them. Maple Shade Outdoors, no underscore, no dot. And then while you're on YouTube, hit subscribe to this show. But KJ he does everything outdoors. If you're into fishing, if you're into hunting, if you're just somebody who likes to go on hikes, the guy this is what he loves to do. And he's a great support of the show. So we will be right back. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. I am Carlo Guadagnino with class of 1985, Evelyn del Cerro, Communication Hall of Famer. But we will be right back.
What's going on, everybody? This is Kieran Dunn, founder of Maple Shade Outdoors. You're currently watching Dingo Talk with my man Carlo. If you're anything like me and you're really enjoying this content, you should like and subscribe his page. While you're on YouTube, you should probably just head over and like and subscribe Maple Shade Outdoors. Check out our page, enjoy some videos, some outdoor content. You might as well hop on Instagram, Facebook, follow us, Maple Shade Outdoors. Now that's enough about me. I'm trying to get back and watch the rest of Dingo Talk, so I'll talk to y'all later.
What's going on, Chuckleheads? I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. My guest is Evelyn del Cerro, class of 1985. We left off, we were talking about all the different acts that Miss Nick brought in, being on the radio station, everything that Evelyn did in her time at Bethany. Now we're going to talk about that test that connects all of us. So let's talk about the week leading in, the week of studying where I don't know, if I don't know it, I don't know it. And if I know it, I know it. What was your that week like for you, studying? And
yeah, we used to call it, I guess they still call it the reading period. It was like, you basically would get into study groups with people from your discipline, and get ready for this test. And it's funny, I didn't know that I was going to have to take the comps when I applied to Bethany and accepted it. I've kind of read it in the fine print in the bulletin later on, and then once I got there, of course, people talk about it, and when I tell people from here that I had to take this senior comprehensive exam in order to graduate, they're like blown away.
Yeah.
Because people, I was like, yeah, you have to take a test in every class in your major from your freshman year to your senior year. And even if you have a 4.0, you don't graduate unless you pass this test. And, I personally, now that I'm on the other end of it, I don't know why every college doesn't do it. I think what is there? It's just like a handful of colleges in the country, like 12 or something.
There is I know the Ivy Leagues, and it's not all of the Ivy League schools.
No.
I know there's like maybe 4 or 5 of them that still have it. And
right.
Then there's, I believe, 3 or 4 other small liberal arts colleges similar to Bethany that still require that. There's one public university I know somewhere in Pennsylvania, I want to say more east, like out towards Philly, it might be Strasburg or somewhere like that they require a similar test, but it's more of your senior project presented.
Right. Yeah, because we and including comps, we also had to do the senior project. We had to do the 4 practicums. We had to do, this interdisciplinary class that you had to take. But again, I think it's after having gone through it, you can't leave without having learned. I felt when I walked out of my orals, I felt like I could sit down with anybody and talk about the theories of mass communication. It was just, but it's a head game, when you're going through it, because all you're thinking about is, if I don't pass this test, it's over, man. Hey, I'm done. So so I ended up studying with some of my fellow comm majors, but I did a lot of it on my own. I'm like a person who, I would go down in the library. I don't know if they still have them, but they had these like study rooms.
Yep.
There was like a couple of them that was it was like literally like a broom closet. It was just for one person. And it had like a tiny little window in the door, so somebody could look in and see if you were still alive.
Just make sure, okay, she's good.
Right, exactly. And I would go down there and I would just like hide, and I would just go over. I had, index cards, and I had, legal pads, and I had, I always tell people the thing about comps is, college kids today, and most college kids, after they're done with a class, they throw away the notebook, they sell the textbooks, and, they're done with it. It's like, it's history.
In one ear and out the other. It's done.
Exactly. But, when you have those comps, you can't do that. You got to go back and, all that stuff that you're getting out your old notebooks. And I was lucky enough my junior year to sit in on one of my sorority sisters, one of my Zeta sisters, on her orals. So I actually had like an idea of what I was going to be in for.
Which is an interesting thing that I don't think a lot of Bethany students know is an option for them even today.
Yeah.
You can sit in as a junior.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you have to go to the professor and go the right way, but
right. And also the person taking them has to agree to it.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have wanted somebody sitting there because I literally was panicking in my orals. But so, yeah, so I had like an idea of what it was like. And, I always remember sitting there, and after the orals were over, and you have these three professors like peppering you with questions, and, then they ask you to like leave the room. I took mine.
The conversation about you.
Right. So they can discuss whether or not you're going to graduate. And I did mine in what's the building, Cochrane Hall.
Mm-hmm.
That was an academic building. And I remember being out in the hallway, and I could hear my friends outside on the street, like just like talking and waiting, because people come out and everybody pop champagne, and you did not want to be looking for the back door for Cochrane.
No.
So I was just sitting there, and I was literally pacing up and down the hallway, like trying to see if I could listen, like
get a glass up to the door.
Exactly. I wish I had thought of to bring a glass, and you go in and you dress, I was in a skirt suit, and guys wear jacket and ties. It's, it gives you also sort of practice for like your first, job interview.
Mm-hmm.
And when I took my first job interview, that's what I harkened back to my time in orals, and how I sat there and how I had to present myself. In that way too, it was a good preparation. But I just sweated it out. But thankfully, I did pass.
Well,
yes. So I got that beautiful piece of art, the Bethany diploma. I have people come here and they look at my diploma, they think I went to medical school, because that's
that beautiful part of Old Main. It's just the way that it's done, and the tradition of it, and that it's continued. It's
all in Latin, hand signed by your professors and the board of trustees. It's just, it's a beautiful piece of art,
So you talked about the fact that orals, you could hear your friends outside. I had Gary Capel on a little bit ago, and he said how when he graduated in the 70s, that wasn't a thing. You didn't find out that you passed comps when you walked, like when you finished your orals. He come back to be a teacher in the 80s, and it was this party for orals that you knew whether you passed or failed. Your friends were there, and he said it was one of those things where his Bethany was it had changed, but it was a great tradition that is still listen, I spilled a water cup before the orals even started. I remember Emmy Gamble pours me the water cup. I'm drinking it like my hand is going, and I go to put it down, and woof, all over the table. So at that point, I opened comps or orals with, all right, aside from me making everybody uncomfortable wet, please don't fail me. I know my stuff. Give me a chance. But it's one of those nerve-wracking things. But the walkout, when you walk out and your friends are there, talk a little bit about that, just the feeling.
Yeah, that was, I took my comps in January. So, just because you take it in January, this way, if you mess up, at least you can do it again in May, and so, all my friends were there. It was freezing cold. I remember it was like snowy. They were all bundled up. Everybody had champagne and, signs and everything, and just like yelling congratulations. And, after that, we all went back down to the Sigma Nu house. I had friends that lived down in the apartment at that time down there, that were home that were there during January term. And it's just like one big party. And then the nice thing about taking them in May is that in January rather, that in May, when they have the next reading period, it's like a free week,
You're done.
Yeah. So we went up to a friend, one of my friends, her father had a cabin on up outside of Pittsburgh, and a bunch of us who had taken our comps, we went up there for the week and just hung out, and all we had to do was come back and walk.
So, graduation comes, and then went and got your master's at the new school?
Yeah. 15 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I went back to graduate school because about 15 years later, this thing came out that was called the internet. And I had a feeling it was going to
be something.
I had a feeling it was going to catch on. I really believed that it was going to change, my industry, and that if I needed to get on board or I was going to get left behind. So yeah, I went back. It was a 15-year gap. I didn't go back. I didn't go right from undergrad, but yeah, after I graduated, I went back home, and everybody told me at that time, in communications, the best thing to do is work in a small station, go down to Wheeling or something, get experience, and then go to then you go to the big markets. But I was like, no, man, I'm from New York. I'm going home,
I'm going home.
I ran the radio station. Everybody's going to want to hire me.
So how did that experience work out? So you're
not so great. Yeah, it was about 2 years of me looking for work. Also you have to remember, this was before cable TV. So there was only like the 3 networks. CNN had just started, but they didn't even really have offices in New York. They were mostly out of Atlanta at that time.
okay.
So, I wanted to get into television or radio. So I sent out a letter. I had to, we didn't have Indeed or Monster, no database. You literally had to buy the Sunday New York Times, get the classified section,
and go look
these ads that were like this big, and in alphabetical order of the company. So it wasn't even like you could find the comm jobs. You had to go through plumbers, carpenters, and then you had to write a letter and send it with your resume. So I did. I sent it out to every radio station in New York and every all the 3 TV stations in New York.
Mhm.
And I basically got back the same form letter from all of them. It was always in 3 paragraphs. First paragraph was, "Dear Evelyn, thank you for your interest in our company, blah, 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 blah. Unfortunately, we are going with another candidate, blah, 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 blah." And then the third paragraph was, "Good luck in your job search, blah, 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 blah." So I had like a stack of those, and I was kind of crushed because I was like, I really wanted to get into, into my field. So I spent 2 years working at a commercial photography lab, Monday through Friday. And on the weekends, I taught swimming lessons and lifeguarded. So I was working 7 days a week because I knew those student loans were coming up due pretty soon. And I had to get on that. About in 1988, it was like March or so, I got an interview. My godmother, I think it was my godmother. No, we're going back a long time here, but she came to me. She found an ad in the paper for a job at a place called Fairchild Publications. And she's like, "Evelyn, you should apply for this job. It's a production assistant, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "I'm not interested in publishing. I want to get into, I want to do radio or TV." And she's like, "But look on the bottom, it says, an ABC, American Broadcasting Company." She goes, "It's owned by ABC. So maybe if you get in there, it'll be easy to move around." Right. And of course I was like, that's ridiculous, because I was, a know-it-all at that time. And, you don't realize how much your elders learn, how smart they actually are until you get older. But so I applied because I had like no bites anyway, so I said, all right, I'm going to apply for this job, whatever. I need a job. And I got the job. I was a production assistant for Women's Wear Daily. And I did that for a couple of years and finally was able to get a job. Yeah, she was right. Once I got in, they had job listings for internal positions. And I would go every Monday. They would have this, like, in the lobby, they'd have a box with this sheet of paper with all the internal jobs that were available. And I saw one that said ENG transport coordinator for World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. And I said, I don't know what an ENG transport coordinator is,
But I
but
want it.
yeah, it said entry level on the first line. So I applied for the job. I went in and somehow I BS'd my way through that interview. I don't know how I did it, but the guy, I don't know, we just got along, and I got the job. The cool part about that job was I showed up on my first day of work, okay? And my boss meets me by the elevator and he's like, okay, I want to bring you into where you're going to be working. So I'm like, all right, cool. We open this door, we walk into the network newsroom. There's Peter Jennings' desk. There's all these cameras, there's all these tables. It's a working newsroom behind Peter Jennings. And he walks me over to my desk, and my desk was literally right behind Peter Jennings' shoulder. So when the news was on,
You're right here.
every night, I was the person sitting behind him, typing, answering calls. Like, my friends would call it, be like, I see you on TV, I had no idea that's where I would be. So I did that. And what I did for them, I went from coordinator to supervisor to manager. I managed all the what's called the ENG, electronic news gathering crews. So we sent them out whenever they did any shoots outside the studio. The assignment editors would come over and say, we need to send a crew here. And just domestically, we had a foreign desk that handled all the international stuff, but we did the whole country. But I was part of every big news story. I mean, all the elections, presidential elections, Princess Diana dying, plane crashes, the big one, 9/11, I was there for. So it was a great experience, and I loved it. But after 9/11, the job sort of changed. And I just decided that I was just getting burned out. I mean, we were working like 16, 18 hours a day, 6 days a week.
And that seventh day you're sleeping to catch back up, to go back to.
Right, exactly. We would do that if there was a big news story, like if we had a big plane crash, in Long Island, and things like that. We would work that way, but for like 2-3 weeks, and then it would go back to normal. And then we'd sort of be waiting for like the next big story, doing all little things here or there. We also did support for Nightline and Good Morning America. So I had a colleague that I worked with at ABC News that was working at WABC, which is the local station that's owned by ABC. The New York, they own 8 stations. They're called the O&Os. And ABC is the flagship station, WABC. And he said, hey, there's a job over here for operations manager and programming, and you'd be perfect for it. It's Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Because as I said, also, when you're working in news, it's a lifestyle. News was, even this was before the cable news, but we had shifts. When you're the new person, you're working 4 to midnights. You're working Saturdays, you're working Sundays. I worked every Christmas, Easter, all the holidays. You made good money by working the holidays. You make double time and a half. And
Oh yeah.
at that time, when you're young, you're like, I just want to make money, But after I started to get a little older, and it just started to burn me out. So I decided it was time for a change, and I applied for a job over at WABC, and I got the position. And at that time, it was working for we produced a show called Live with Kelly and Live with Regis and Kelly. And another funny story is when I got there for my first day of work, my boss met me by the elevator and said, let me bring you to your office. Because now I moved up from like a workspace to an office. And I walk into my office, and I'm sitting there, and I realized that my office is right next door, like literally shared a wall with Regis Philbin. So one day I'm sitting I'm there 2 days, and he comes walking by, and he walks by my office, the door's open, he looks in, and he's like, so are you my new neighbor? And I'm like, oh, like that's Regis Philbin, like television icon, man,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, So he comes in, he sits down. I had a couch. You have a couch in my office, and he's like, "So where are you from?" I said, "I'm from the Bronx." We just grew up in the Bronx, so right away we bonded, and it was kind of cool. He was a great guy. Just recently passed away, which was I was devastated about that. But it was great. I mean, so I do all their programming, their FCC compliance, their music rights and licensing, and I've been there since 2003. So in total, I have 33. Actually, last week was my 33rd anniversary with ABC.
So if you're somebody right now that is at Bethany, and congratulations, because that's the 33 years with any company. I mean, you don't see that. It's a foreign thing because every job has another job attached to it that I might have been here for a couple of years, but got my feet wet. Now I'm going to move over to here.
Right.
So to be one place, well, two places, but one.
Yeah, I mean, I was in 3 different divisions, a merger. We got bought by Walt Disney Company in my 15th year, and survived it all. So yeah.
For the Bethany student right now that is a calm person that thinks, as I also did, like you said, I ran a TV station. I was the host of all these shows. Everybody's going to want to hire me. That stack of letters that you got, that was the 3 paragraphs. That's the business, right?
Yeah.
That's part of the whole. What you're getting into is your Syracuse, your Northwesterns, your Bethany's. There's a big difference between big school to small school, and
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say that it's a lot harder too for students today because most of the jobs in our industry right now in television, for sure, have gone by the way of freelance or what they call permalance. So you get these young people, you pay them, dirt money and no benefits. And, you just hope that you stay on long enough or that you can stay on long enough financially to get a permanent position. We didn't really have that back in my day. So I really was at the right time, because when I applied for a job, it was a staff position, there wasn't no such thing as this, but somewhere along the line, they determined like, oh, wow, and it really was born out of sports because they would do that with, the ABC Sports would do that during baseball season. They'd hire all these people, for baseball season. And then they were like, when baseball season was over, they were still paying them. So then they decided, well, you know what, we're just going to have them hire for the season. We're going to give them this status of permalance. So they get steady work. They're working, 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, if not more. And then when baseball season's over, it's like, we'll see you next season, good luck. Right. So it's much more difficult now. And on the broadcast end, I'm talking, it's a little different in ad sales or marketing or, finance and the other components of broadcast. But in the technical part, the production part, programming, that's basically what it's like now. So, but it's all about, you just have to be able to take rejection and get knocked down and pick yourself back up and just keep trying. I mean, I just, sometimes would wear people down, I was just like, I just wanted it so bad. And I would use, what I learned at Bethany. And, I think the reason why I got the job at ABC News was because, I started talking about, I said, I have what I call these core skills, time management, logistics, critical thinking, I just was making this up as I was going along. But, I wanted them to see that because I was coming from publishing and they were like, how does that translate to working in broadcasting? Well, yeah, I mentioned what I did in college, but I also mentioned that, hey, even though I was working for a daily newspaper and we had deadlines, we still had to get, the paper to the printing press on time. So, I had all of that logistical work to do. And I just, made myself sound like something that, way bigger than I was, but hey, it worked. So,
so the last question, I think everybody's going to enjoy this when they see it. But the last question it's a 2-parter. The first part is, you were a Division III athlete. at the beginning of Division III, and like you said, Division III here at Bethany women's softball was not a focal point. But if you're talking to somebody from the Bronx that's looking to go to a smaller school, why Division III, and then why Bethany?
Well, obviously Division III is a lot less pressure. You can really enjoy the game. I found I almost felt like going from my high school program to the Bethany program, it was almost like a step down because it was so intense in high school. But I found that I enjoyed playing more, in college. And actually, up until last year when the pandemic hit, I have been playing softball. I haven't missed a season since 1977, my freshman year in high school. I play in a rec league here, and I play for WABC. We played in Central Park in a co-ed league for my job. So, I learned, I feel like you can really enjoy the game. You don't have that pressure. There's less competition, and you can make the team and be an integral part of the team without having to be a superstar. Maybe you're not the best athlete, but you enjoy playing the game. You have more of an opportunity. So I would say opportunity, big thing. Why Bethany? Bethany, because I would say, I know they've gotten this moniker recently called a small school of national distinction, because especially during my era, we have some amazing graduates. Marie DeParis, who was a vice president for Sportsnet, Dave Sims, the voice of the Seattle Mariners, Faith Daniels, who was an anchor for CBS Morning News, Bob Orr, another correspondent for CBS. I mean, we had people that like went places, you look at the wall of fame. You talked earlier about the Bethany Wall of Fame. I was lucky enough to be part of that inaugural class. And when I got my letter, I was looking at these other people and I was like, I don't even think I belong here. These people were like Jeffrey Sieglin, these people were top notch in folks. So I think that, because it's small, the opportunities that you have, it's great. You can, if you want to join the theater, you can join the theater. You don't have to be a theater major. If you want to have a radio show, you don't have to be a comm major. You can take advantage of so much in a smaller school. And I think that is what lends itself to be something that's worth looking at, especially if you're a person like myself. I was a big doer in high school. I was vice president of my senior class. I played softball, basketball, yearbook, school newspaper. So I was a doer, so when I came to Bethany, that's what I was hoping to do. And I did get those opportunities. So I would say that it opens you up. You don't have to be in bigger schools, you're not going to be at a production because you're not a theater major,
Yeah.
So opportunity is the big thing for sure. And, I think that all of that is what prepared me for my career.
Well, I wanted to say thank you very much for being a part of the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. For those of you that don't know, if you've made it this far and you don't know who this is Evelyn del Cerro, class of 1985, is not, as I said earlier, 2085. We're not even there yet. So, but I have to send it to Harry Chambers with Jack Hoffman, and he does a segment now. It's called Jack's Facts, History as It Happened, where Jack tells us everything that happened in his time here in Bethany. And then that will lead on to Harry explaining everything about the store. If you're in Bethany and you haven't stopped at Chambers, you didn't come to Bethany. And if you've gone into Chambers and you found something that they don't have, you might be the only person in the history of the world, because if Chambers doesn't have it, you don't need it. But Evelyn, thank you very much for joining me.
Yes. Thanks so much for the invite. This was great. I had a good time.
And there might be another show somewhere down the line. We get a couple people back. Maybe we do a calm gathering or something. And we do like a round table.
That would be awesome. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. And thank you again for being on the show. I am Carlo Guadagnino. This is the Dingo Talk Alumni Tour. This week's guest was Evelyn del Cerro, class of 1985. But take it away, Harry.
For those of you athletes out there, November 13th, 1943, Bethany played WVU in Mountaineer Field in Morgantown. Anybody see that happening today? You ready for that, Coach Garvey? Come on, let's make a challenge. So, just a picture of the flyer that was out there.
Well, they played a lot of teams. There was actually baseball. They played Pitt, Army, Ohio State. Early, before they were forming the leagues that they
And they competed fairly well, didn't they? Back then?
back then, yeah. Well, there wasn't a recruiting that. Bethany played Navy in basketball as late as the 50s. When Robinson played for them, for Navy. What was his first name?
I'm not sure on that one.
He turned pro after he got out of the Navy. He didn't have to serve his time in the Navy.
Okay, that works.
You've just watched another exciting episode of Dingo Talk, recorded in the secret lair deep in the hills of Bethany, West Virginia. Let me give a shout out to my man Don over at Maple Shade Outdoor. He's got some great stuff going on over there on YouTube and Instagram. Please make sure you check him out. Also, now available as promised, we have the second edition Bethany, West Virginia Mushroom Capital of the World t-shirts and our Chambers General Store. If we don't have it, you don't need it t-shirts. Available in all sizes. So make sure you stop by the store for a t-shirt, breakfast sandwich, or sausage biscuits and gravy, and make sure to check out those daily lunch specials. Now back to you, Dingo.
Bye now.